Um, what's your question?
Oh, maybe like.
Okay.
Always me.
Oh, you had a question?
Yeah.
Oh,
Is
okay.
are we supposed to save it, or
I think auto
when
saves
you're
it,
ready
right?
to put your name, it automatically saves it?
I think auto saves every few seconds. Yeah, we're probably not gonna use that. I mean, it's just to kind of get an idea. Most of the time, we'll just be scripting. Um, okay, so the idea of it is just to kind of understand how you write manual tests and things like that. So that doesn't go away. I mean, you still have to write manual test cases. Um, so think of like this is what we kind of worked over the weekend. You guys have built test cases to test that applications. Let's assume the dev team was working to build that feature. Does that make sense? So when it comes like, let's assume like today is the day they deploy this into production, right? And your job is to test this, right? So what I want you to focus on maybe next 10 minutes, I just wanted to show you the pinpoint of all process, right? And where do you fit in? When do you come in and kind of solve that problem, right? We have to see where the problem is, and that's what we're kind of working toward, right? So we're going to figure this out very soon. So what I want you to take next maybe, it's not a lot of scenarios, right? Like 10, 15 minutes, just manually execute step by step of those test scenario on that website, Dark Sky, right? So whatever steps you created, I just want you to go through that and see if you find any issues. If not, that's fine, right? If you find any issue, we can talk about it based on your test cases. Make sense? So everybody online, do the same thing. So ideally, you would like to kind of go here. Yeah, so you want to scroll, then you want to start testing that stuff.
I think I did like whatever.
We'll go over it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's one of the scenarios. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, but it's everything. Everything. So whatever you see, for example, make sure. Yeah, that's what we're doing. We're creating different user stories. Yeah. Yeah, that's one of the options. Right, yeah. That's enough.
Okay, so I guess we can resume a little bit. So what you're doing right now is manual testing, right? You've written some test cases. You're going through step by step to see if all of the test case passes or not, right? So that's good. Um, no, but usually you're not gonna. I mean, this is pretty simple scenario, right? Things are gonna be more complex in real life. So it's gonna be more steps, more validations. The workflow might be, you know, kind of like zigzag, right? But that's okay. The idea is still the same, right? What you got to understand is fundamentally, like when you go to a real job, it's not going to be apple to apple. That's not how engineering works. What you're learning here is fundamentally be able to solve problem but adapt to new changes. Does that make sense? So that's what I focus on most likely. It's not going to be everything's not kind of be like spoon fed to you and hey, just what I'm coding, and you go home and you code the same thing. It's not adding any value, right? That's like hit or miss. Like 2 out of 10 might get a job, right? But what my focus is, can 8 out of 10 get a job, right? That's what the focus is here, right? So percentage. So when you're prepared well, when you understand things fundamentally, you can answer any questions, right? When you prep for like when your mind and attitude is to solve problems, so whatever problem they give it to you, you can kind of prep for it. That's why one of the main thing is we don't like I try not to emphasize a lot of on interview questions, right? Just share your experience of last 6 months, and if someone likes you, then they hire you. If not, you move on to the next one. But you have to prep well to kind of continue with this course. So you have to kind of drive yourself. Um, so that's the first thing. So you've done manual testing, right? Did anyone find any bugs? And raise your hand. And if all right, what's the bug?
When you put the incorrect location, you just put in in the search, you just
Mhm.
put in some random zip code,
Right.
and it doesn't give you an error message for that. It should, right?
But it's not also picking up.
It doesn't, but it.
I think it's happening.
Right. So I mean, yeah, that could be, but that's not related to completely time machine. But that's fine, right? That could be a bug. That could be we could call something called regression bug, right? Bug might not be related to this future, but but that's a good point, right? We'll talk about this bug a little bit later. So this is called like a regression type of bug. Well, it's not really directly related to the future that we are building, but maybe building this future caused some other issue somewhere else, right? But that's good. Excellent. Anyone else found anything?
Can you check like 1870 or any other date, like past years? Did you hire that you didn't do?
Like if you go back to
Like I went to like 18 something.
oh, like 1800. Well, yeah, okay, that's fine. That's a good edge case. Very rare, but that's edge case. Okay, but that's good. That's a good bug.
Yeah, I had the same thing as Bobby did, just putting in numbers.
Okay, so you guys are doing really good. Go ahead.
When I open section maps,
Which one?
on the top,
Here?
yeah, maps.
Maps? Mm,
I press in Safari. I can't return to home page.
okay, so that's okay. That's again, that's a good bug, but that's more regression bug again.
But second thing, when I do it second time, one more time,
On maps?
yeah, you can't, and now you can't return.
Okay, so very first time when you open the browser
In Safari.
in Safari. So this is happening on Safari. That's good. So that's the browser compatibility issue. So this bug only resides in Safari. So the developer has to look into the Safari capabilities of that.
I checked that as well. When you click on the map, it posts it into a new window, and so there is no back button because it's a new window or new tab.
Sometimes it puts you in new tab
New tab,
in
yeah.
Safari.
I tried it on Firefox and it did that.
That's okay. That's okay. Again, that's a browser-based bug, right? So it may not be the functionality, but it's how the browser. But you know, developer has to do something on that to make sure that.
Also on the map page, there's no the header is gone. Your homepage header where it has the icons and the map and.
Yeah, but that could be by design,
Okay,
right?
yeah.
So we don't know that. But the other two are valid. It should not open a new tab,
Yeah.
right? We're not in the 90s, and it should not open. It should allow you to go back, right? So these are again, keep in mind, a regression bug. They're not directly related to the. 1 second. They're not directly related to the actual functionality of the app that we are building right now, but some other bugs been introduced during that phase that outside of the scope, right? It's him and then you.
I couldn't find the option to log in.
Log in.
Yeah.
Also write down this one.
That's good. That's fine. I don't know if you can log in. I just created the requirement.
In the test scenario, there was an option to log in.
I think you could. No. Well, if you.
API.
1 second, guys. 1 second. If
Login,
you
it's the
you
old
needed to go to
API.
Dark Sky,
Yeah.
and then you needed to sign up here. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's a question you could have asked product manager. Like, hey, I can't log in, right? So, but that's something that, but that's good. Like, because in this homepage, you don't really have a direct option on log in and log out. So that's, that could be some usability stuff you can bring up, right? You can say product manager, hey, from the homepage, there's nowhere to cut. Like, it's like people has to go to Dark Sky API for it to get this option. Can we have this option as part of the homepage? So you also can suggest features that are kind of inconvenient for that user. So that goes into like user experience guys. They have to make those decisions. But these are all valid stuff. This is what you needed to kind of see. So everyone who's kind of just observing these questions, this is what happens in real life, right? You have questions and then some answer comes from someone, right?
So on the search bar, you see it says 347 West 30th Street, right?
Right.
On mine it says 350. Would that be counted?
Because the geofencing of this,
Right.
it's
That's
kind
not-
of all over the place, right? So it's just kind of, because Manhattan is difficult, right? If it was like somewhere in my neighborhood in Westchester, like it would have been like just that
The
house,
same thing happened to me last night as well when I tried to
right?
when I was at my house and tried to search.
But you live in a crowded area?
Really?
Okay, so it could be just geofencing issue, right? They're not really using their API. They're probably using Google API or whatnot. I'm not sure, but it may not be an issue. But that's a good point you can bring up, right? Hey, maybe we need more accurate geofencing. Maybe they're using the radius might be too big, right? So where it's not able to calculate exact location. But if we make radius much smaller, then it can be more precise, right? So it depends on that solution, whatever. But this is a valid point. I don't want you to think it's not about.
I just
Because
I
now
didn't get
I'm
this
thinking
on my-
like a developer. I'm defending myself. Okay, I want to get to a point where I'm defending the bugs. Any other ones?
So I had similar question like him, but also the auto location doesn't work.
What do you
Like
mean?
I had to, so in my computer, I see like cannot determine the location. Please use the search field. So I have to type it.
Oh, so it's not detecting, enabling it.
Yeah,
So you might have, like, I think in your Chrome, you might have an option when you first open Chrome. It says to track your location, kind of like your iPhone or Android, allow or don't allow.
I allow.
You probably, yeah. So
Still.
yeah, so it could be just that individual issue, but that may not be something developer can look into, right? Because it's happening on an individual basis. Okay. Any other questions? Any other questions? All right. Okay. So this is what we do. So now let's say we found all those bugs, right? I'm gonna go through a torture. We fixed all those bugs. You guys created a bug, and I give you the build again, and now you have to test everything all over again, right? That's kind of a pain, right? But now, okay, listen. I just don't want you to test it in a Chrome. I want you to test it in Safari. I want you to test it in Internet Explorer. But we're not done there yet. We wanted to test your last 4 version of Chrome, last 4 version of Safari, right? But we have to also test mobile browsers, right? Not just iOS, and we need to do Android and iOS, and we need to do it in different devices, right? Not just iPhone X, iPhone X. So do you see how testing becomes crazy like that? It's just not possible, right? So, and I mean, think about it. We've downloaded apps, and right away, how many apps we deleted, right? Because you downloaded an app, bad user experience, bad bugs, crashes, we instantly delete, right? Like the users are spoiled now. It's not like back in the day, right? So you don't give anyone a chance anymore. So we can have bugs in our application, but it's one thing we get a bug in like Angry Bird or something, but it's one thing, a different thing we get a bug in something that is more confidential, right? Like a financial details or personal details, right? Or even like social media stuff, right? So now these days everything is online, so you have to protect that really well, right? So there's no bugs, there's no leakage, none of that stuff. So it's very important. We have to do manual testing, but we also have to make sure how do we pace up, because if we go in that rate, right, we're gonna have way more testers than developers, right? So the companies just cannot afford it. So we want to be at a point is 1 to 2 or 1 to 3. So if there's 3 developer, maybe 1 QA automation engineer, combination of manual and stuff. But you may go into a company where they're doing everything manual. Believe it or not, 80% companies still not in automation. That's why it's one of the fastest growing thing happening, right? So, I've audited a lot of companies, and when you go there, you're still doing everything manual. So you might be the first person going in there and may have to introduce automation, right? So, and don't be afraid to that. I mean, that could be the best position you could fall in your life, right? Because now you get to build everything from scratch, right? Now it's difficult, it's challenging, and it's stressful, but you gain such a good experience. You're gonna make a lot of money within short period of time, right? Because you're building everything from scratch, and you get to learn a lot of things along the way, right? But that's what manual testing is, right? So now when I add all those things that, hey, I need you to test all of that, you just can't do it. So you can do it. You'll be like, listen, I need a week. So between every release, you're buying week. So how long would it take for you to deploy that to the production, right? It's just not going to happen. So the competitor might just do it before you or whatnot, right? Or if there is a blocker where users are not able to make their payments, right? Or like a mortgage payments or something. Think of that. And if you can roll this out, how are they supposed to do this, right? Are they all going to call your call centers or whatnot, right? So I just wanted you to kind of gain that experience of where do you fit in, what your role is, right? And today's kind of the third part of figuring out what our role is. Um, so we're not going to just stop at that. So when you think of features such as time machine, this is what we are building, right? So let's assume time machine working as expected. But what if the other modules within the app, right? So we have search, right? We have geolocations, right? So things that are a little bit more complex, right? Um, we can say a timeline, right? So while you're testing this, you also need to make sure, like let's say these features were built prior to Time Machine, right? So you also have to make sure all of this stuff is still working as expected, right? We need to make sure the timeline is working as expected, search is still working, geolocation is working. So not just that you need to test these scenarios, like the 10 scenarios you've written, you also need to test maybe another 200 scenarios to make sure all the other ones are working. So now multiply whatever you are doing by 20, right? So it's going to be very hard and tedious to kind of do this manually, right? So where you add huge value, we may still have to do this manual because we still don't know what are the fix the bugs, because you don't want to create an automation script and it's kind of it's already there's a bug there, right? So usually this kind of gets done manually still, but sometimes we can automate it along the way. But this must be automated at all point and maintained every day to make sure nothing is broken. So what your job is to build out this regression test suite, right? And the way you do this is you have to automate this, right? And how do you automate it? You have to be a programmer, right? And so for you to be a programmer, you have to learn a language, right? And that's kind of the pain point, right? And you can learn any language. It doesn't matter if it's Java, JavaScript, Python, as long as you're good at any of those. But in our case, we're going to be learning from Java. Make sense? So does everybody understand what their role is now? Why you are where you're going? Like, because in the past classes, I didn't used to do that, and that kind of led to problems where, we're halfway into Java and still don't know what our role is, right? So I think it's important that before we jump into Java, so then you have a purpose for learning, right? Okay, I need to learn Java, right? So then, if you want to be a scientist, you have to be good at math and physics, right? So it's not because he's not learning math to be a scientist. He wants to be a scientist, so that's why he needs to be good at math, right? That's kind of what the thing is. So you want to be a test automation engineer, and along the way, you need to just learn Java, whatever comes along the way. But the goal is I need to be a test automation engineer. Does that make sense? Right? But the programming is not the only part. The first 2 days, whatever we have done, that's also part of your job, right? But you're not executing the regression test suite manually anymore because you can't. It's just impossible, right? Otherwise, you're gonna have to hire like 30 people in India to do this testing because there's no way we can afford it here, right? Okay. Any question? Any question about your role? Where you add value? All right, let's move on to testing types, right? Now that we've learned the SDLCs, STLC, agile methodologies, and all that stuff. Let's look into some of the testing types, and I'm gonna just high level. You can kind of read this thing through more in details. But I guess like high level, if someone were to ask you now, like what is the difference between manual versus automated, right? What would you answer?
Manual is like we do it by click on the whatever the application is, checking by manually like manual. Automating is like automatic. For automatic is more likely when we add a new feature and we wanna test all of the stuff and we cannot do it manually because there's gonna be too much stuff.
Yeah, you can do it manually. It's just not going to be efficient,
Yeah.
right? Because you using a lot of resources. The deployment is going to be much longer. As soon as a bug happens, everything stops. You start over again, right? So that's kind of the reason. Okay. Anybody else wants to explain it? How about you?
Well, they're pretty much the same. Manual testers they use manually, and the machine they use language with automatic.
Okay, that's good, right? So that's pretty much what it is, right? At a high level, we need to make sure distinction between manual versus automated tests, right? Manual test, what you guys pretty much done, right? The automation testing is write a script for that, so you don't have to manually do that. Now, obviously, writing the script takes a little bit longer, but long run, it's going to pay off because you're not going to. If you have to run 100 times, you no longer have to. You're probably maintaining it. Things may break, right? Maybe they renamed the button time machine to submit. It's no longer going to work, but that's an easy fix, right? Or maybe when you click on time machine, it leads to a different page instead of the details page. But those are again easier change, refactoring on code base. So automation testing, and it's not just helps you with that aspect. We can integrate this to our. Remember we talked about deployment, right? So our regression tests can be completely, no interaction at all. As soon as there's a new code into the development repo, we can always keep a watch on that repo. If we smell or if we see new code, it can automatically trigger your regression. So there's no human involved at all. So there's a more advantage of adding automation tests because that will what complete continuous integration and continuous delivery. So even if we have to make deployment every day or every other day, you don't have to worry about regression. It will automatically run, automatically generate report, automatically sends email notifications if something fails. Does that make sense? So it's very important that we understand it's to also integrate with other teams, you have to kind of do automation. I just don't see a company doing without it, right? So like I said, you may go into a company which is very mature and everything is kind of working flawless. You just kind of, kind of insert yourself into a very well kind of, well-running machines. But you can also get into an environment where they not have any automation and they're looking at you for answer, and you should be the answer for that, right? All right. So that's pretty much high level. There's some definition here. You can kind of read through this. But let's go to what unit testing is. We talked about unit testing, I think, a little bit in the past. But let's see what unit testing is. So unit tests are very low level, close to source of your application. They consist of testing individual methods and functions of the classes, components of modular used by your software. Unit tests are in general quite cheap to automate and can be run very quickly by a continuous integration server, usually done by developers, right? So you can think of this is something like an unit test, right? But unit test, we are just testing a specific functions, right? So let's say if there was a function that validates name for us, right? Like, okay, make sure the name should not have special character, name should not maybe have space, whatever may be the case, right? Now, before it gets to you, the developer must write some tests to make sure the valid name should not have, you see how it's an expect valid to be false, so this name should be false because it has Adam and then a numeric value next to it. This one have an annotation mark, right? So there's a special character that should also be false. A name can be have some name can be have hyphen, but in this case maybe their requirement is the name cannot have hyphen. So this person wrote 3 tests already. So if there was a bug in that function, they would catch it before it even gets to you. Like I said, if we catch the bug at a unit test level, company saves a lot of money. If we catch a bug at an integration level, we save a little bit more money. I mean, a little bit less money. If we catch bug at a QL level, that's still like, we're continuing to lose money as the later stages we are finding bugs. If we find bug at a production level, that costs company around 70 grand. So because of all the engineering time, along with support time and reputation of the product, right? So along with all that, someone came up with this number, not me, right? So it kind of calculates around 70 grand if there was a P1. P1 means like really bad bug online. Make sense? There was a recent bug happen with Apple, right? Where when you do group chat, and let's say you call someone, and before they pick up, you can hear their conversation, right? So if my friend, right, if my friends call me like, yo, man, this guy calling me, like I don't want to talk to him, but then they can hear that before you actually pick up, right? So imagine like how much news they're talking about it in podcasts, this, that. It got bad reputation, right? So that's kind of what you want to catch during unit tests. It's not going to catch a lot because it's just focused on that specific function that people are building. But maybe how the name is coming, or after validating the name, maybe this name gets passed on to another object, and that's when it can break. That's when your end-to-end test will catch that because you're doing from login to the whole flow and so forth. All right. Okay. Deepak, can you give me host access? I can, or you can unmute Mira.
Hello.
Hi, Mira. Go ahead.
Yeah, what do you mean by modules in the unit testing? What is module? What is that?
Module.
Yes.
Oh, module. You can think of like individual functions, right? So I guess more like a functions or methods, right? So if we wanted to just test a specific function, those are kind of done at a unit test level. But we're not writing those tests. They are being written by
Okay, so unit test usually, which mean like developers you're thinking, right?
Right.
I mean
Right. These tests are usually written by developer team. Like, if we go back to our SDLC, whenever you see development phase, they're writing this test.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. You can lower the hand. So, yeah, I can do it. Okay, perfect. Thank you. Any questions here? All right, fine. This is JavaScript. So this is how usually tests are pretty much categorized, right? So it's bottom up, but it's not alcohol. So if you look at here, right, unit test. So usually we write a lot of unit tests, right? Followed by a little bit smaller pie of the integration test. God damn it. Okay, fine. Okay. Call it API test or integration test, right? And this is kind of, we'll make this a little bit smaller, right?
Basically smaller components.
Yes. No, because it's more expensive to write UI tests, right? So this is where you write end to end test. Ideally, we like to find the bugs here, easier to fix. It's not going through any flow or anything like that. Dev finds it, they fix it, right? If not, we're gonna learn how to do API tests toward I think, week 12 or something like that. There's an app that I built, and you can kind of play around with it, doing API integration testing, right? So API testing or integration testing, if we find it here, we also save a lot of money because now it's not even going to the front end. We're finding it at an earlier stage. And then finally, obviously, ideally, you want to find it here. It should not go into production at all. But this is what you're writing. You're writing a lot of end-to-end tests, right? Like I said, they are very expensive to write. It costs a lot of money. Ideally, we would like to find, but there will be more unit tests, ideally. But usually what happens is the other way around. We write a lot of end-to-end tests, and less and less. If they don't have good development practice, they might not have any unit tests. So what's going to happen is you're catching so much bugs, and when you're catching a lot of bugs, chances are you're also you're letting some of them go into production, right? So that's that. All right. Let's focus on integration tests, or I like to call it more like API tests, so to speak. Integration test verifies that different modules or services used by your application work well together. So for example, it can be tested with interaction with database or making sure that microservices work together as expected. These types of tests are more expensive to run as they require multiple parts of the application to be up and running. So think of when we go back to, do we still have that diagram? Oh, maybe not. Okay, we have it. So think of like something like geolocation. I don't know how to host that, right? Maybe hosting that is very expensive. Does that make sense? So, or a search. So this could be their own individual microservices, right? So when you think of microservices, they could be their own API. Make sense? So when you think of an API, they're just simply different. So even though from the front end side of things, you're seeing them as just one app, but they're not technically one app. They all came together. Same thing was when you go into a website and you see a Facebook button or something like that. So integrating with, but that's kind of a simple integration. But these days, you can log into other apps through Google Login, right? So Google Authentication. So you don't have to sign up to their app, right? So you're logging through the whole. If you have a Google account, you're kind of like, they will allow you to log in, right? So this is a full integration. You have to test that integration because this is not as simple as putting a Facebook button and under the hood you're just putting a link to the facebook.com, right? That's more complex, right? We are actually utilizing, we are kind of getting all of the user details from the Google and then having you sign up there, because along the way I'm also keeping some information, right? Who signed up for my user data, right? So this kind of environment are very expensive to obviously up and running, but that's fine. But when you're testing all of it together, or if we made a new integration, then this is what called, or we adopted a new service, this is what's called integration testing, right? It can be within your own company, or it can be an external to your company, maybe a service that you bought or API that you purchased, right? Another good example I can give you guys is, think of we all got into airplane, right? So what happens is the flight time for the airplane doesn't change no matter which side you go to, like Orbitz or you go to Expedia or American Airlines, right? Because that's being maintained and built by just a single team, right? It's just one company that does that. They don't have any UI or anything. It's just a service, right? So let's say your company today decides to also start to sell in, I don't know, flight time, right? So you can't go build that overnight, right? So you have to buy that service. So when you build that integration, that's when you have to do the full integration to just make sure that contract between what you guys trying to accomplish is being working along with the data that we are getting for that external team, right? So when you think of so you have the mobile app, maybe again you don't have to understand all of that stuff, but these are, you see the REST API, account service, inventory service, shipping service. They're actually 3 different apps, but eventually through these APIs, we are kind of you can just consume it directly, right? But under the hood, there are different databases, different inventory service or account service, right? It's like, you can think of your house. You don't put everything into one room, right? You put it into different room, and so that you can access them easier. So same thing with software, building software. We have to make sure they're divided based on categories and functionalities. All right. Any questions? So this is what's called integration testing. So when you're in a meeting or something like that and say, hey, we have to do integration testing with this geolocation team from Silicon Valley or whatever, right? And we say, okay, well, what is the contract? What are we doing and what are they giving us, right? Because they might not give you access to everything they have, or you may not need access to everything, right? Maybe you just want to kind of get, geolocation does a lot of different things than just giving you coordinates, right? So you want to find out all those details before you jump on it and testing it, right? Okay. And then kind of the simpler ones we already done. So what you've done today.
One question. Can you- on mobile, we have API gateway, but web application, we don't need the API gateway.
What do you mean?
See, after gateway,
Mm-hmm.
they go into three APIs.
Yeah, don't worry about this architecture. It's just an image for now. But in theory, we're not gonna have two different ones. We're going to have the browser or the mobile hit the APIs, right? But they kind of, in this image, they kind of build this tier, right? But we don't have to go crazy about this architecture. We're not there yet, right? We're not there at that level of explanation. We gotta want to focus is that we have different modules, and if something changes here, we need to make sure we gotta do integration testing with different. Make sure the inventory stuff is showing up in account service. Maybe account service stuff is showing up in shipping services. All right.
If the other company changes their like some software.
That's a good question. Excellent.
Do we have
I know
to
what
do
you're saying.
integration test?
Yes, of course. Right? Usually when we deal with external company, we're doing a lot of get. We kind of just, they don't, they probably not let you write a lot of things to their database, right? So you're getting a lot of get information. So if they make a release or change, they will notify all of their clients. Because you pay them big bucks, right? So they're going to have a rep, like a developers and product manager that are representing your company as well. So you're going to constantly be, but that's a valid question. Excellent question. All right, we'll move on to functional testing, which you have already done, right? Functional testing is pretty much functional tests focus on business requirement, which you guys have already done, so I don't want to go over this again. So in functional testing, you can also focus on UI testing, UX testing, as well as functionality of the app, which you have written a lot of requirements for, and then you execute and you carried out the entire test. All right. Regression testing, we talked about it, right? Let's say we were building account services, but let's say account service is working fine, but you also have to run automated tests for inventory and shipping service to make sure they are not affected due to your changes on account services. Make sure. So if you have automated tests, and this is the part where you will do most of your work, building out automated regression suite. Okay. End-to-end test is kind of like functional tests. All of your tests, I like to design all my tests end-to-end. Every single test you write here is going to start from logging in to doing whatever you want to do, right? So that way, if something breaks, only one test is breaking. And these are stuff kind of we learn through experience, right? In the past, like when we were kind of writing tests in the beginning, we will kind of chain up a lot of tests, right? But then if something breaks, it's really not executing something else, but they're not really related to each other, that test could have run itself, right? If you're testing search, you shouldn't block payment. Does that make sense? So it's hard to isolate the issues if you chained a lot of tests together. What we're going to be focusing on, every test will be individually independent, right? So there's not going to be no dependency on tests. So that's what end-to-end test is. Make sure from login to full checkout to receiving your order from Amazon, right? And actually writing a review, you write the entire end-to-end flow, right? You're not just testing login, or you're not just testing search, or you're not just testing payment, right? Those you could do when you're doing a functional testing of an individual feature, right? But when you're doing a regression or end-to-end, regression or end-to-end kind of works together, right? And again, most of the time, this stuff is pretty automated. Acceptance or UAT testing, right? Once you're done with your testing, you have to give this application in some sort of a demo environment, right? Demo environment means like a sandbox, so to speak, where you give it to the users, like a small group of users, and you say, hey, can you play around with this application for like a week or so? And if you see any feedback, can you come back to us? So it's not something that as a QA does it. It's more like end users who's going to be actually consuming that application. Make sense? Performance test checks the behavior of the system when it's under significant load. There are non-functional and can have the various form of validation, reliability, stability, or whatever. For instance, it can be observing response time when executing a high number of requests, or seeing how the system behaves with a significant data, right? So we talked about performance testing, I think, very low level. So what we want to say is this is non-functional. So there's nothing you can do functionally, right? And this stuff literally has to be automated, right? Well, you can, when you become an engineer, when you get out of here, if someone tells you to do performance testing, you can figure it out because you know how to do coding now, right? Once you know how to do coding, you can pretty much choose a career path you want, right? But you have to kind of put in the time to learn that. So if you have to do performance testing, I don't tell my students that, hey, don't say you can't do it, right? You be honest, like, hey, I have never done it, but if you put me with give me the right tools and some sort of mentoring, I can figure this out, right? That's the attitude should be. So if you have to do a performance testing in a company, don't back out. There's the tools out there. You just have to learn them, right? That's all it is. What you do here is, so let's say you're working on an applications and you want to make sure the performance is going well. So what that means is you put up different load into the application, right? So let's say you put 100 users. 2 minutes later, you put 200. Like you keep incrementing 100 users every minute, and you keep monitoring the server performance, right? It's like running too many applications on your Mac. It's gonna start to slow down, right? You want to see at what point it's slowing down. Does that make sense? So the point it's slowing down, we say, hey, this is the baseline. We can only go up to 500 users on this application because if we go beyond that, the response time is start to slow down, right? So now we say, okay, let's add another server. So now we can accommodate 1,000 users maybe, right? Add another server. So as the business continue to grow, you have to continue to add new hardwares in the back end. But you are helping them to make those decisions. We are not going out there and purchasing, 300 servers. That's expensive. So we will start with maybe 20 servers and we'll start doing performance testing. And as the more users are coming in, we can also do a lot of stabilization. Let's say your users, you run the test for like 24 hours. You start to see pattern. When do people go into your site, like mostly, right? So you see the peak hours. So if it's like, let's say 12 o'clock, 12 p.m. or something like that, where a lot of the users are going there during lunchtime or for whatever reason, right? Then only during that time you'll allocate more servers, right? Other time you don't want to keep hanging servers out there; it will cost you money. So all of those decisions you have to make. Amazon's not gonna do that for you because they would love for you to keep the servers up and running so they can make money, right? So all these cloud services. So that's when performance testing comes very handy. And there's no way you can do that manually, right? But there are tools out there. So that what I'm trying to tell you is that just like Selenium, there are tools out there like LoadRunner, K6, whatnot. You just have to integrate them, right? And to do some studying and figuring it out. But that's not something you're going to learn in this class, okay? But I just want you to be aware of what is performance testing. But do you see how you're continue to add value, right? I just want you to understand, like, you really need to understand Where do you add value? Otherwise, you're not going to be satisfied with your career, right? Don't just do this for a job. It'll be hard to get a job if you just do it for a job. Try to understand like where you add value, and it's not hard. It's not so easy to replace, right? Once you know how to do all these things. All right. And then finally, smoke and sanity testing. This is kind of like a think of like so now you have this architecture, right? So out of those four features, you have to decide what are the top 20 end-to-end scenarios that must work at all points. Without those, we just can't run a business. Does that make sense? So your highest priority scenarios will turn into either smoke or sanity, depending on the company, whatever term they use, right? But fundamentally, what that means is, because if your manager comes to you and say, hey, I need to quickly run this application, right? We have this major bug happen. I need you to run these test scenarios. You might start running regression, right? But regression might be, 800 test cases. So it will take a much longer time to get the response back, right? So you might say, let me just quickly run the sanity or smoke, right? Or when you get the build for the very first time, if any of those 20 scenario fails, you reject the build. You say, hey, there's no point running regression on this because the smoke is not passing, right? So this is kind of the first gate where you do the testing on new builds or things of that nature to make sure if those 20 scenario doesn't work, I don't want to have any conversation because there's no way we're going to be running 800 scenarios, right? Because now you're allocating servers. When you're running those automation, a couple of the servers are pretty much occupied. So no one can use those servers for other reason like deployment or this and that. So I just wanted to understand everything costs adds to money. So you have to be cautious about those things. So that's what pretty much, and there's more definition once you kind of start reading those, you get better understanding. We talked about exploratory testing. You guys have done that, right? On the last class, where you don't have a lot of requirements. You kind of want to just ad hoc through the application. Just kind of go crazy, right? Come up with some mind maps to test around, right? And see if you can break anything. So just kind of explore around the app, and it's kind of like casino, right? When you feel like you can beat the game, you're gonna lose, right? So, but when you do a lot of random stuff, you tend to win. So that's kind of what this idea is. Just go random and see if you find something or if you break something. All right. Any questions? There are like 30 of those things. We're not gonna go over each one. Those are the ones that matters most to me. So I thought like we'll share all of those and read through those, try to understand them, but mostly apply to your real life so that you can understand, what they mean. Any questions? Any questions from online? Are we good, Deepak? All right. So, since there's no question for now, we'll take a quick break. It's 7:53, so I guess we'll be back at 8:05, and we'll start with software development architecture, and then if we have time, we'll introduce to programming. All right, let's take a quick break. I think it's different. I think it's Command L or something like that.
Command L.
Just Google this stuff. I think someone will tell you. All right, let's get started. So now we're kind of getting into a little bit more technical side, right? Slowly kind of diving into coding a little bit, but this is the last slides we're going to do before we get into coding, okay?
We don't have this.
I shared this with the welcome package, right?
No, this was shared last week.
This was shared when you signed up.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. But
Probably you resent it.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So what we want to go over is, we've understood the workflow of SDLC, Agile, and then all the different testing types. But what we really need to understand also, how does the software works, right? like I said, these are not just kind of a web application. These are not just an HTML, CSS page where it's a static data, right? It actually does a lot of work for you, and so it requires different components. So when we talk about it, and mainly because you need to understand these terminologies, because as we go on and we talk about services, APIs, and stuff like that, so you understand what are these. So when you think of clients, so very first layer is client, something that a user interacts with. So we call them clients, right? Because we could say, oh, browsers, but now we have phones. So, but just the common name is the client, right? So the client is something the user kind of physically interacts with, application, and it could be, like I said, it could be Apple Watch, it could be a phone, right, that you interact with. It could be a GPS, it could be a refrigerator, right? It's just so many different things these days. But then obviously the browser is one of the heavy consuming user. But it also depends what kind of application is that. There are applications these days where we don't even make browser for it, like a web application, because they're completely run on apps. So depending on your business, you'll see the usability on your application. But this is what the clients is. Clients interacts with the server. So server is something stays within your own firewall. Firewall means within your own ecosystem. So think of like Google. You can access their server, right? You can see your details, right? We interact with their server, but it's also kind of protected through different layers, right? Something that is not in your house. So that way I like to say, this is in your house, in your property, this is the company's property. So when you interacting with Gmail, all this data is hosted somewhere in Virginia, like that's one of the massive data center locations. Some premises that is owned by Google. Make sense? Right? Same thing with Apple. When you kind of dump all your photos in iCloud, right? They're hosted now in some server somewhere, right? It's no longer locally on your phone anymore. You can see it, right? That's your client. You can interact with it, but you cannot. It's not technically on your phone, right? You're just visually just seeing that. So that's what called server is, right? So server, again, like I said, it's a very powerful, massive machine, right? That's what you can kind of visualize it, and all these servers are hosting something called all this backend application, like how you call mobile apps or web apps. For backend softwares, we call them APIs, right? Because they don't really have an interface. They don't have something that you can physically interact with, right? They're consumed by clients. So you have to have a client to use your API, or you have to have another API that talks to that API, right? But just API is not user friendly for the users, like end users. So in the servers, usually we have API. The reason we have API, they're faster, they're easier to kind of develop in that regards. They can be shared across different clients. So if you have an Android, iOS, anyone can kind of interact with those APIs. So instead of having different modules, so let's say if you had a logic where you need to access your bank account, if we didn't have the API, you would have to build it for iOS, you have to build it for Android, you have to build it for web apps. So let's say if there is a contract change on how you access your account or your details, you have to make the changes in all three places. Make sense? But it's also kind of sitting on the users. Like when you download the app, it can kind of comes with it, right? So we don't want to do that. We want to kind of build this application somewhere in a central location and have the client interact with it. So another thing is this is a server-side app. A lot of the terms you're going to have, and I can't go over each one of those, but if someone calls it web service, someone calls it microservice, right, API, they all pretty much mean the same thing, right? All backend applications. So any of those terms comes in during the meeting, that means they're all referring to the same crap, right? And then finally, what you have is database. So these applications, all of those code bases like Java, Python, they don't store anything in their memory. As soon as you run it, after you stop it, it's gone. It's completely wiped out, right? Something called garbage collection that picks it up, dumps it, frees up this memory for the subsequent runs. Make sense? So let's say you register today, right, in Gmail, and tomorrow they turn this server off for whatever maintenance reason. And if that server was storing your information, it's gone. When you try to log in with that details, you can log in. Because as soon as we restart the server or restart your computer, it's like, think of this. You're working on a document, and all of a sudden your computer went off, and you didn't save it, right? So when you boot up your computer again, that details is no longer there. But when you hit the save button, and when you actually name your document, when you come back, when you reboot your computer, you can see these details. Make sense? But in server side, it's a little bit more complex, but just trying to get you understanding of how that works. Well, what is the solution then? Why don't we do this? As soon as it signs up, client, user will sign up here, will go through over the internet, access the Google premises, right? We hit the API, we verify the logic to make sure is this a valid sign up, right? Or even better, is this user already signed up before, right? We check all of those validations. Let's say we give a thumbs up, like it's working, we store that data into a database. Database is hosted in another server, right? So that way, they're not conflicting, right? If something goes wrong here, we always have a database that is backing it up. So database is somewhere, it's another application, it's another software, and this is where you store informations, right? Demographic information, personal information, account details, anything that is information. It has tables, it has a bunch of tables, right? Lots of tables. Within the tables, you have rows and columns. That's pretty much it. But we are storing all of that. These days, there are a lot of different type of database, right? SQL, NoSQL, whatever, right? But in this case, all you have to understand about database is that it stores informations. So when you try to log back in again, we remember the API, because API is kind of like memoryless, right? It just knows the logic, right? It doesn't know where the data is. So it will go to database and say, hey, is Mohammed here? He's trying to sign up again. So it kind of, database will give Mohammed's details, API will grab that detail and give it to the client, say, hey, he cannot register, he's already in a database, right? Now, if we restart database server, that's totally fine, right? That software is built, database software is built for that reason. So even if as soon as you save it, it will kind of store it there. Does that make sense?
We have connect without API.
Sorry?
We have connect. We can connect database without API.
We cannot. Right? You can. We don't want to. Do you want to expose your queries on the client side? No, because that's very hacky, right? So today's modern days of technologies, we will not try to access database from a client side. We want this wrapper to be here, right? So only the backend code will access the database, because database is your most valuable thing in your company, right? Nothing else.
API is logic.
Yes. API is where we store the business logic. Database where we store the information. Client is where we do the presentations, right? Make sense? Guys, you got to explain this, right? You go to an interview, we explain all these things. Last 3 days we learn, they're gonna hire you, right? But you got to have to deliver this. The only way, if you keep working on it, you'll figure this stuff out. Any question on this architecture? And this is a pretty simple one, right? Usually when you go to a company, they'll be like, 8, 9 of those APIs, but it doesn't matter. You only focus on the ones that you're working. But it's always going to be similar. It cannot, like I said, fundamentally, we have not changed how we've been coding since the 60s, right? So as long as you understand how the communication works in computer science, all of those things are going to make sense. So again, and this API all have a unique name, kind of like a unique identifier. And what are those unique identifiers? Is the URL, right? There is no duplicate google.com, right? You can only have a unique identifier. So when we send this request over the internet, it looks for that unique identifier and it goes there, right? And lasts almost milliseconds. When it goes there, let's say I'm asking for, hey, Mohammed is trying to log in. The API is like, okay, is he my user? If he finds it, oh, he is the user. But it doesn't come back and tell the client, oh, Mohammed is a user. What it makes a decision itself saying, okay, since he's a user, he's trying to log in, let's give him the snapshot of his inbox, right? All of the messages and things kind of is there, right? So we're not kind of going back and forth and having unnecessary communication because he's my user and he's trying to log in. So obviously he wants to land on his home screen of the Gmail. So it will grab the snapshot of all of your email details and then give it to the client. Now this communication gets sent through two type of languages. You can kind of scratch that. We don't use that anymore as much, at least the older applications still uses XML. It sends the communication back through the internet using something called JSON. JSON is the language format. So let's assume this. You have someone that speaks English and then someone that speaks Spanish, right? And if they're trying to both communicate, it doesn't work, right? So let's say these APIs could be built with many languages. They're not just with Java or Python. So depending on whatever API, maybe geofencing is easier to build with Java or better or more efficient. So we might build. So it's not going to be, it's pretty, completely language agnostic. So it could choose any type of language we want to choose, right? So in this case, this could be written in JavaScript, but your client is Android, right? But even Android, which is Java or Kotlin, right? So, but the JSON is something that everyone understands, right? So the API understands. API can take this message and kind of decrypt it, right? And read what's what is being sent to them, right? And when it comes to client, it also can decrypt it and kind of, right? It's kind of like the Game of Thrones messaging to the crows. If you watch Game of Thrones.
Translator.
Yes, you can say it. It's kind of a messaging language or translator, all right? Any questions? There's a lot of information here, right? And it's pretty fun to explain it, and it's also fun to work on it. So when you find these bugs, it could be at so many different layers, and when you find it, you feel satisfied, like, oh, damn, this is where things are going wrong. Go ahead.
I guess I'm a little confused because the web service, the APIs are broken down into 3 different components, so that's where I'm getting confused.
No, that's valid. So think of these 3 components on your application. Dark sky, right? You have a geolocation, you have a search, you have a timeline. So one other component could be geolocation because we don't want to put them. So think about it. If your search goes down, your geolocation is still up and running, right? So we don't want to put everything into one bucket. So if that server goes down, entire app is down, right? So usually those modules and components are pretty much, and that's what we call them microservices these days, right? It's just a selling. What is that? XML, they are messaging languages. So when you send the request to the server kind of sees, hey, do I have this or not? Whatever the message the server is sending back, it's going with XML, JSON as well. It's coming back with JSON or XML. XML is for older APIs, right? But the newer REST APIs, they're all pretty much used with JSON, okay? All right. We talked about clients, but there are some definitions, like clients could be any of those, everyone who likes visual explanations. If you use a browser, that could be a client, right? Like I said, anything, GPS, refrigerator, whatever. I want to talk about this a little bit, right? We've always seen HTTP and HTTPS, right? So when you think of HTTP, is all communication sent over regular HTTP connection are sent as plain text, which is insecure, and in another word, is not encrypted, right? So one of the Facebook news recently came out. I don't know if you guys follow a lot of the tech news. One of the earlier version of Facebook, they were keeping these messages on plain text, right? So someone either kept it inside of their, if you go in and someone can see everything you did, right? All of the stuff that you kind of did, and it's in plain text. Anyone can read it. Does that make sense? Right? So that's not secure. So user sends a request, say, hey, here's my username and password. I'm going to go over internet where anyone can hack me, right? And can see my details, and then land it on Google server and give you the username and password, right? So that's what HTTP is. It's the message gets sent and comes back using plain text, right? However, HTTPS protocol, which is pretty much all of the application uses today, that message gets encrypted, right? It gets kind of like a random text. But when it gets to the server, we can decrypt that message and actually see what happened. Make sense? That's the only difference. So, but this is an insecure connection. This is more encrypted connection.
Who uses HTTP right now?
I don't know. MySpace. um, Clients, we talked about clients, right? So the client portion of the app is written using scripting languages such as HTML, which is used to display text and format section within the page. Then use CSS to provide styles and colors to the text. We talked about that. HTML, CSS, I think some of you guys attended some of my workshop. So, but in this, it's a little bit more complex. It's not completely correct, this definition, because we are using iOS and Android, which is much more complex than, or even the web application these days are not as simple. I mean, there's so much crazy animations and this and that, so it requires, heavy load of JavaScript, more advanced level of JavaScript and stuff like that. Okay, it's I don't know the full definition of it, but it's like a cascading style, something like that. What that means is when you go into an application, everything like a color, font size, all of those are built through a technology called CSS. All right. We talked about API and web service. So this is where you can identify these languages a little bit, right? Where they're being used. But they're kind of all over the place these days. In the past, we had Java, Python, Ruby, all of them are residing on the server side. Even our application, Selenium, is going to be a server-side app. It's going to test the web app, but Selenium is actually a server-side. So you're actually learning back-end engineering rather than front-end engineering, right? So API web service layer, this is where the business layer where programmer implements business logic and modular basis, right? So the programming language which is being used to develop this layer are Java, Python, Ruby, most recent days JavaScript can be used, right? To write the back server side, C#. So if you look at all of those, these are backend developers, this layer communication with client layer, database layer in conclusion. This is pretty much carries all your business logic, right? Business logic is not carried in the client level because you don't want to expose that, right? So all client access the same logic no matter which interface they're using. So in other words, it doesn't matter if this is a browser, this is a tablet, or this is a phone, they're all accessing the same logic, same implementations. We talked about JSON a little bit, right? They're software and hardware independent tool for storing and transporting data from one system to another over the internet, right? They're easy to read for human and easy for machine to parse and generate. So we can also understand what a JSON is telling us. It's kind of easier to read, but also it's very easier for system like your machine, your computer to parse it, right? Kind of decrypted, and it's just faster. It's lightweighted. We talked about database a little bit. Anyone wants to explain a database? Getting tired.
Like a massive machine that privately stores information that you can
You can? You can get it through the API. Okay. Go ahead.
Organized system of storing data.
Yes.
So, so things, API or whatever is accessing it, you can easily find it.
Yes. Right. I mean, it's not just storing data, right? I like the word, like organizing is storing a data, right? So, okay, so another answer from online is database is like our information bank, storage bank, right? So, yes, but it's also like database is simply many information about certain entity, such as an object, person, etc. For example, a person has name, location, accounts, jobs, etc. These are all data related to the person, right? We store all this information into something called database, which has tables that includes rows and columns. So one thing we need to understand, when the database are built, they're actually pretty complex, right? To design them, it's hard to design them. As your business is growing, that's why when you go to a startup and you look at the database, you can't find anything because we didn't really know where our business would kind of land or go, right? So we kept building tables, and then the products say, hey, we got to get rid of this feature. We're going to add this thing. So then we just kind of keep dumping. Think of all your house details, you put it on one Excel sheet, right? It's gonna be hard to find. But if you break it into like a different thing, then it's easier. Like let's say all the location related stuff can be one table called location. All the account related stuff can be called account. All of the jobs related stuff can be in jobs, right? But then if location needs jobs, we can get that table. We can join those both table, right? Because each of those tables have a way to connect them. So we can kind of write a join statement. Now SQL uses a different type of language. It is a programming language, but it's called SQL, right? Structured query. It's very easy. It's not very hard.
SQL.
SQL. And like I said, don't go home and try to learn that now, right? Because once you learn Java, all of those things would be easier for you to learn. So what would happen is, once you learn Java, then now you learned a very complex language, right? So then learning JSON or learning SQL will be like a weekend thing for you. Okay, I'm just gonna take 20 hours and just go over a lot of SQL stuff, right? I mean, you're not gonna be an expert, but you don't even have to. The goal is not to be an expert in SQL because these days you don't really deal with database. If this step is passing, that means it's good, right? If something is failing here, that means they messed up something in the database, right? So that's kind of developer gonna look at it. But if you're going to become an application developer, right, who's building an API, you have to know database really well, right? But in our case, we don't deal with database a lot. We are kind of stopping here and here, all right? And there's nothing wrong with that. That's your responsibility. That's your job responsibility is not to go into database, right? You may not have access to our database. Because if someone goes here and runs the wrong query, you can wipe out a lot of stuff, right? And then we can always go back, but nobody wants to do that. And I don't think you want to be the person known in the company that removed all production data. Anyhow, any questions so far? All right, so that's it then. We'll have a quiz on this stuff, so just mentally prepared, maybe, right? So next time when we come in, we'll go over these things as well. We'll leave this side. We are done with UI. So everyone is running Intallij,
Yeah.
right? So that's good. We're not at loops yet, so we'll focus on
You didn't send this
Yeah, we don't have.
No, I didn't send it. I still have to get some stuff done. For this batch, like I'm updating a lot of the materials, so everything you guys are seeing is for first time. I mean, it's been kind of redesigned, but it's more organized. I'm usually known for sloppy stuff, but this is like I'm actually investing a lot of time to make it a little bit better. All right. So I may send you half of it, but before we get to loops, it's like 2-3 weeks. So it'll be pretty much done by the weekend. So I'll send you over the weekend. All right. But in most part, you don't really need that doc. I mean, doc is just for information purpose. We are not going to use a lot of slides and stuff. So if you see one slide, we may go into a couple of classes with no slides at all, right? It's just coding stuff that we're going to be doing. So just be cautious. This is just for information purpose. It doesn't help a lot. But some people like to kind of go through these definitions, and I put some images and things to kind of help a little bit better. That's all. All right. So when you think of programming, right, what comes to your mind? I mean, we're all here to learn programming, right? But what is something that comes to your mind? Well, coding and programming, same thing, right, in a way. But just for like a definition purpose. You guys are very quiet there today.
That's how logic language.
Logic, okay.
Creating software.
Just software though? That's good. That's good. Go ahead. Right.
Language in general is for communicating. So programming language is a way to communicate between different technologies.
Okay, that's good. Right. Um. Anybody else?
It's a set of steps that you would do to achieve something or get something.
Right. Yeah, I mean, all of you guys are correct, right? But no one's gonna ask you that question in the interview, so that's a good thing, right? Uh, but it's just kind of taking a manual, like let's say something that you're doing manually, right? And all of a sudden, you want to automate that, right? It either through, and it can be software and hardware, like the code can run on a hardware as well, right? So I mean, eventually it does run on hardware, right? Technically, all your machines are hardwares. But if you wanted to achieve that goal, right, automate that process, either software or hardware, um, and that's when you can write some programs that a machine understands, right? That's what Zahir kind of mentioned. So a program that can a machine and a human can understand. We can kind of come in the middle ground, right? If we go back to like all the way to the right to the machine, they won't understand us. It's all zeros and ones, right? But even if we go all the way to, how your mom speaks, like that also cannot be how the machine works. The machine can understand. We have to kind of decide to come in the middle. And that's the language that we do. It's called program that a machine can understand, but also a human can write, right? So it's a programming is something where you give instruction to a machine to do something for you, right? And you hope that machine, or most of the time machines are um, listens to you if you write a good code, right? So that's pretty much what it is. You're just giving an instruction to the computer. Okay, where did this go? It just disappeared. It's like, okay, so that was it for programming. Let me see. It's opening again. And here's kind of like more details on how programming works, right? So computer programming is a way to giving computer instruction, but what they should do next, these instructions are known as code. So you're correct too, right? So programming is, yes, it's giving instruction to the machine, but also the steps, each steps is what we kind of code, right? Okay, step one, I want you to do this, step two, right? Because without that, machine cannot perform that action for you. And computer programmers write code to solve problems or performing tasks. So it is solving problems and performing some tasks repeatedly if you wanted to do that. So the end goal is to create something that could mean anything from a web page or a piece of software or even just kind of a pretty picture. That's why computer programming is often described as a mix between art and science. It's technical and analytical, yet creative at the same time. So it's a combination of a lot of things. You can go back to building that ATM machine, right, or vending machine, or to build this crazy AI-based platform, right, that can recognize your face and stuff like that. So it can go from a very easy problem, which is maybe a calculator, to, like I said, going into whole holographic kind of thing, right? So these are all problems that a human trying to solve with the help of computer, right? And the only way we can give this instruction is through these languages. Now, these are kind of all of the programming languages that you see out there, right? Java is one of those ones. JavaScript, Python. I mean, you're probably not gonna care about most of those, right? So I'm not sure. But Java is computer programming language. It enables programmers to write computer instruction using English-based commands instead of having to write in numeric codes. It's also known as a high-level language because it can be read and written easily by human. Easily word, I will take that off, but it can be written by humans for sure, right? So you have a problem. This is your Java code, right? And this is what a machine code is, right? Because if we were to write 1001, because ultimately that's what machine understands. We have not gone beyond that. We just knew how to extend that. That's all. Like add more probability. Like that's what we have done. So think of one thing. How many message can a computer store with just one digit? Like it can be either 1 or 0.
Can you repeat?
How many messages that a computer can store in the memory if it can only choose between 1 and 0? How's your switch at home? How's your lights works? Electricity works, right? So each electricity bulb is pretty much zeros and ones, right? If it's a 0, maybe it's off. If it's at 1,
It's on.
it's on. But now let's add it, right? Let's say now software engineering, and as 18 months pass by, we added more memories, right? More RAMs into your computer. So now we can store 2 digits, right? 1, 0. How many messages can I have on that light? So I can have combination of 1, 1, 1, 0, 0, 1, right? Right? So 0, 0, 4 messages. Now your lights can be maybe maybe some sort of user experience where if he's at step 1, right? It could be green. Step 2 is right. So now think of like billions of numbers. How many combination can it store? But fundamentally nothing has changed. We just figure out a way to add more numbers into our machines, right? But they're all stored between 1 and 0. So you can store a variable called, let's say, my name, right, Mohammed, into the computer, right? It just probably used a very long string of 10001, like some random stuff, right? But so under the hood, that still's the same way. Like it works the same way and ultimately solves the problem for you, okay? So this human instruction is your programming language, right? And that could be any of those languages, and that's fine. Then comes, okay, well, what is Java, right? Well, we talked about it. Java is, again, a programming language that a human can understand, right? So Java is a programming language that produces software for multiple platforms. When a programmer writes a Java application, the compiled code, known as bytecode, runs on most operating systems, including Windows, Linux, and Mac operating system. Java derives much of the syntaxes from C and C++ programming. So if you go one layer down, kind of like a low-level language, right? That's C, C++. So you have to write more code to do the same thing. So what they did is they built another software called Java, which you can kind of do less, right, to do the same thing. But you add another layer of communication as you keep building this stuff up, right? But it's gonna get a little bit slower. So had we wrote the code in C, C++, it's closer to the machine, whereas Java is a little bit far from the machine. But now think of things like Python or JavaScript, right? They're a little bit farther from even Java, right? They're very high level language. So when we are, if you go to like a lot of the Googles and Facebooks, right, all of this core stuff are probably backend stuff are probably C, C++, because they're still, the C++ is still the fastest language in that regards, because you can still write it. I mean, we can go back to zeros and one. That would be the fastest language, right? But C, C++ are probably heavily used. All right. So now you have a source code, which is your code. This is something you have written, right? What happens is source code gets compiled into bytecode, right? And then bytecode is kind of getting ready. It's getting prepped for the machine code again, right? And then when you downloaded Java over the weekend, right, it installs something called JVM on every machine, right? So JVM is Java Virtual Machine that kind of takes that bytecode, understands the bytecode, and spits out a machine code, right? And then finally, machine understands what the instruction you gave. Does that make sense? Right. So this part, you don't really have to go crazy about it. No one's gonna ask you about it, but you need to understand what you're writing and how it's gonna get compiled, right? So all we are going to be doing is here. As soon as you save it, automatically does the compile. When you run it, it will take the compiled code and convert it into machine code. But you don't see any of those stuff. This is just for understanding purpose. All right. Is it getting technical, or are you guys okay? You haven't write any code. I don't want to scare anyone off, right? It's very easy stuff. It's just you have to understand them. You have to invest some time, right? Don't take it lightly. This is an engineering course, end of the day, right? So you know, it doesn't mean you have to be a math genius or physics genius, but you have to still focus and go home. If you think you're a little weak, you know, watch some YouTube videos now because you kind of have some understanding. Don't watch it too far ahead, but at least the things we went over, maybe listen from another perspective, right? It could give you a little bit more details. So that's okay. Just kind of like don't go ahead of me. Otherwise, you're gonna be a little bit lost, right? But if you kind of go home now and try to understand what is programming, things are gonna make sense a little bit better. All right. Um, so that's that. Now let's start maybe write our first application. So open your Intallij, and then I'm opening it from here. Um, you create a project. So when you create a new project, make sure to select Java, and make sure your SDK is pointing it to this. Um, so that So before we open IntelliJ, a lot of you guys asking why are we using IntelliJ over Eclipse, right? This is just an editor. It doesn't change your code, right? It's like writing your final essay or some sort of documents, right? So you're using either Google Doc or Microsoft Word. It's your preference, right? If you like to use Google Doc or Notepad, it's totally up to you. That's what we are using. You can write English paragraph in any of those platforms, right? So same thing with writing code. It's your preference of which platform you want to use. But since we are in the same class, I would prefer we use the same tool because this is the one I have expertise on. Well, not expertise. I know some how to use it. So honestly, you're not going to use 95% of the future, right? So don't stress too much about it. You don't know something about the IDE. This is called IDE. It's a little bit more compact with development kit installed in there. How do I explain that? So I guess integrated development environment. It's not just an editor like Notepad or something like that, right? It's powerful enough to compile it for you. It's powerful enough to obviously save it, consume any type of dependencies and stuff like that when we go into Selenium, more advanced stuff, right? So it's very powerful, and there's two versions, community versions and professional version. I still don't know what are the difference between those, so just get the free one, which is the community version, right? So just get the community version and it should be fine with that. Again, IDE does not matter. If you go to a company, they will not care what you're using, right? Either Eclipse or IDE, but most likely once you use this, you're gonna like this. I used to use Eclipse for Java, but then switch over to this a couple of years ago. So you just kind of make sure you're selecting Java. We're going to get to Maven and stuff later, but right now we are going to do Java. Click on Next, right? And then click on Next, and then you name the project something, right? So we'll say, I don't know, Java demo. Right? And then you'll say open a new window. You see, my preference is dark. It's because if you go to preference here, and my background is dark, you can either choose the theme darkula or light, right? So whatever your eye feels better, that's what you can choose. Once you do this, so it's like creating a folder, right? Think of like, if you created a folder in your documents or in your desktop, and this is what we have done. So you can choose any workspace. I usually like to create a folder called workspace inside of documents, and any type of Java project, I dump it there, right? So then you know this is serious stuff, right? And then what we want to do is, again, it's like now we have something called workspace, and inside of a workspace, we have, let's say, pictures, right? But what do you mean by pictures? We need to actually have sub-modules to describe, oh, this is the wedding pictures, this is the kids picture, this is the trip picture, right? So you label them with something else. So we need to create something called package, right? And we can create this package inside of something called SRC. And we'll create this package called basics, right? So once we get to the right click on SRC, and just do new, and then click on package. Okay. Let me make this a little bigger. It's actually good.
Every time I right click, it shows.
Okay. If you're individually, if you're having issue, just hold on. We'll do it after the class. Okay. And then on the basics, well, I have the folder, but I don't have the Java code, right? So we need to have a file. What is the extension of the file called Excel? XLX, right? What is the extension of PDF? PDF, okay. So what I'm trying to get to is that you see how those have extension?
Yeah.
So when your computer gets them, they understand what type of program they are, right?
Yeah.
This is an Excel type of program, so we need to have a Java extension folder, right? So we need to have a Java file. So when your computer gets a file, it says, no, this is not a PDF, this is not an XLX, this is a Java. Let's send it to JVM. Does that make sense? So we need to do that. So we need to first create something called Java class. We call them class, all right? A lot of languages, they call them file, but we call them class, all right? We click on Java class and make sure the kind, you see what it says kind here? It's defaulted to class, and we can just call it, hello world, right? So the reason we're doing hello world, they say it's kind of a curse if you don't start your programming with this. So I want to make sure that no one blames me after that. So we do this, and it creates this curly braces thing. So your scope of writing the code, you can only write code between this opening curly brace and this closing curly braces, okay? And at this point, all you need to understand, you see how package called basics? It's telling that, hey, this file, hey guys, we can do that after, like once I'm done. If you're having issue creating this, don't worry about it. You have a video for this. You don't have to create it now. It doesn't matter. Right? It's more of, if you understand what's going on. So you have the package, and then followed by, you have something called class name. We named our classes we started with what? The first letter being uppercase, right? The first letter of the first word is uppercase, and then every new word is introduced within that class name, right, or file name, would be the first letter would be uppercase. So this is called Pascal casing, okay? But what we need to understand, the class names should start with uppercase and followed by every new word's first letter should be uppercase, okay? And your package's name starts with lowercase, and every new word introduced should be uppercase. The first letter of that new word should be uppercase. So, however, class name should start with uppercase, and then it kind of stays the same. The package name should start with lowercase. These are the two things you need to understand, right? So we're going to go over this definition later, but this is called camel casing, and this is called Pascal casing, okay? All right, so far, we know that all of our Java code has to stay within the scope of those two curly braces. So I don't want to see you writing code outside here and say, hey, it's not working, because it's not supposed to work, right? So we don't write anything outside that parent curly braces. Where we write our code, still not here. We don't write our code saying, hey, run this program. What we have to do is, so we have a class. We have to have something called method, and we're going to spend a couple of days on methods. But for now, all you have to understand is method is something where you execute Java code. Okay? So, and this definition will continue to change as we learn more about methods. And don't worry about the keyword public. Don't worry about the keyword static. Also, don't worry about void. Don't worry about any of those things, right? In 2 weeks, you're going to learn all of that, right? But we have to take it one step at a time. This is like learning how to put puzzles together. If I try to explain you everything right now, you're not going to come from tomorrow, right? So we're going to take one step at a time, right? I'm going to use the method that's been working for past students. So you got to be patient. If you know a little bit, just kind of bear with me, all right? And because majority students, they need to be learned from the beginning. So if you have some experience, don't lose patience. Eventually, it's going to get challenging for you, right? And it could be a review for you, or you can help other students, along the way. So what we have is something called main method. So if you wanted to run a Java code, your code has to reside within the main method, right? I'm going to quiz you on this next class because you have to understand what is the difference between package and class, right? Class is where your method resides, and method inside of a main method is where your code that wants to get executed, Java code that will get executed, right? So the very first code that we want to run is it's just for our program to tell us, on every time we run our program, it should tell us hello world. That's it. It should just tell you hello world. Make sense? Okay. How many of you guys did the prep course? So you got some idea of what's going on, right? So that's good. Excellent. So every time you kind of see this, and now if you can run it many different ways, right? We can run it by right-click on this method and hit the run button. And since we don't have any applications, so think of something like we don't have a web application to test this, right? But how would you test your program? We're going to be using this output console. So this is called console, right? So this is where we're going to see what our program's supposed to do, right? So a lot of time we are going to say system.out.println, right? So, but if there was a web application, let's say there's a front-end developer who has HTML, you know how we have the darksky.com, they would just simply connect to this, right, to their code, and we will kind of say maybe something like this, button dot display. So instead of system out println, hey, every time you click on the button, it's going to say hello world, something like that, just to kind of give you understanding of how we connect the front-end code to back-end code. But since we don't have that, and we shouldn't have that, we should be testing our own code individually, we're going to be using kind of like a scaffolding, right? Like this is kind of a temporary solution to see our output. But whatever we see here, you can assure that that's what's going to show on the front end. If someone were to have an application where they click on a button and it tells them hello world. Make sense? All right. Any questions so far? So do we understand, okay, we have to create a project, then we have to create a package, but not every time. So package is only if all your basic stuff, just put it under here, right? When we get into like, let's say objects, right? Create a new package and then put all your object classes there. Organize it however you want it. I'm not going to kind of monitor you on how you're organizing your folders, right? But try to understand that you don't have to create a package for each classes, then it defeats the purpose, right? You should group them and then have one package for them, right? Again, it's kind of like going back to the picture analogy. Like if you have a folder called pictures, right? And if you create package for each picture, this doesn't make sense. But if you say, hey, London trip, LA trip, right? Now you're kind of breaking them into different type of pictures from a different visits. So you have to group them, and then you have to kind of go from there. All right. So we have the project, we have the package, followed by a class, and then finally you have a main method, and then you have the code that you want to print to console, right? Oh, and this is a data type called string, and we're gonna get there in a little bit, right? Maybe next class. But for now, I want to show you some shortcuts to building this out, right? And you see how I do double slashes? That means it's comments, right? If you've done the prep course, you should know that. Double slashes means this is being ignored by this is being ignored by the compiler. So Java ignores it. It's just for your note purpose. You're kind of keeping some notes. So, and here you can kind of just, if your code is very complex, you can write what your code is doing. It shouldn't be. I tell my developers, your code should not have comments. It should be descriptive enough to explain what's happening, right? So your code should look like someone is reading an English language. So that's what we're gonna get to, right? When we saw that unit test, you saw how it's kind of reading. You don't have to write another comment top of it because the code itself is so descriptive that you can tell what's happening, right? And we're gonna have to get to that point at some point. All right, shortcut for so if you start typing PSVM, so these are the stuff that you get with Intallij or other IDE, integrated development environment. Not editor cannot probably just provide you that. So then you do that, right? So you don't have to write out the whole thing. So just do PSVM.
Which paper? After PSV. Which paper?
Okay, let me see. I forgot. I just know how the keyboard works. So we'll say PSVM, and then you do command. Oh, it's not command. See, you messed up my flow. I don't know now. It just kind of gives you an option. So you see, when I started typing, you start to see that. So when you do the shortcut and you do the PSVM, and it will get it. And then we have another shortcut. Right? So because we are always going to be printing stuff, right? Printing stuff to the output. Now we want to see what the output of an action. So every time you want to do this, you will do something like this. South. You see how you say south? And then just select the first one, and it will give you that, right? And then we can type hello world.
What did you write as the short word?
Sout. SOUT. If you're a Windows user, I'm not sure. What are the? I think it's same. It works. I was just kidding.
For public static void, you can also type main.
Main also does it, right? Okay. Yeah. So yeah, there's like a bunch of shortcuts out there. Don't get too focused on shortcuts, right? Because it's not super important. Yeah, because we're never gonna use main. When we get into real-time application, we don't use main at all. But this is something that we're gonna learn how to code with for now. Okay, let's move on to the next topic. Well, this is kind of where we have to start, right? The very first thing we want to learn is something called variables, right? So in programming, we use a variable to store data temporarily in computer memory. So we store data somewhere and give the memory a location and name. Therefore, we can access the data from a given location in future, right? For example, we can use box analogy where we can store different products in individual box and label them with name so it's easier to access them later when it's needed. Make sense? So think of, yeah, again, I mean, this is kind of how they're explaining it, is every time you create a variable, that means you're storing something in your computer, and that computer could be anything like your server or whatever may be the case. And if you want to access that value, right, then you can always kind of call that variable and get it. Like think of something like your age, right? You may not just remember which age are you referring to, right? So you can, instead of calling the value, you can always just call age, and based on the current day, it will continue to update your age, right? So you don't have to keep track of your own age. The program will do that for you, right? But for us to do this, we have to first part is the data type, right? What type of data type are we? And we're going to get to data type in a little bit. And then the second part is your variable name. And then an assignment operator, right? So if we are saying this will be the data type, this will be the variable name, and this will be the value that's going to represent age, right? So, and then we take this 20 and we store it into the computer's memory. Does that make sense? Right? And every time we run it, it will kind of bring it back out, and if you call age, and it will work for you. So let's do this one, and then we'll get to data type in a little bit. So I'm going to get rid of this stuff. So I'm going to keep, this is kind of a sandbox. So if you're going to need some of those code, you're going to have to watch the video a little bit and rewind and pause, and that's the only thing. So int. So think of int as like a whole number, right? And we're just focusing on age as a whole number, right? So int age followed by assignment operator, and then we say 20, right? So let's say if I run this code, what can I expect to see here? Raise your hand. I shouldn't see anything, right? Anybody else? If I run this code, what would happen? Why not?
There's no printing command.
Sorry?
There's no command to display, like printing command to display.
There is no command to display what?
Display this age or display something with putting that printing command.
I know what you're saying. I want you to explain it in a way I understand right away. Okay, you're good, but someone else can explain why can.
No print statement.
And what does a print statement do for you?
It prints whatever we want to print, like the variable.
Right. It looks for a variable, and it looks for the data inside of the variable, and that's the value that prints out to console. I want you to start explaining using the keywords like console, output, right? Terminologies. I need you to start. You're good, but that explanation is not good enough for me, right? I need you to use the terminologies so that you're getting used to having conversation, right? You're not gonna go to a developer and say, or your colleague say, hey, no, this is the thing that's gonna print, right? No, you need to say, hey, this is not printing in console. Can you help me resolve this issue? Does that make sense? All right. So the way we can print is what? South. And then we say age. So now if I run my code, what would happen? Right? We'll just print the number. Okay, but when you print 20, I understand, but what the hell this thing is, right? So you need to be a little bit more descriptive, even when you're printing it. So let's try this thing out, see if it works. So we say my age is 20. Does that make sense? So I have two variables and I added them both together. But we added a string value with integer value, right? That this addition is different than the traditional addition, right? We're not really adding in an increment where we're just kind of combining, concatenating. So it's more of a concatenate. It's not an addition. It's actually concatenating two values together to mean something. But I'm still not happy with the message. It still looks crappy. What do you mean my age? Who's my? Who's representing my, right? But what if we did this? Muhammad age is 20. Well, it still sucks, right? Because who's Muhammad, right? Since there's a lot of Muhammad, that's not the main point. It's like, but how do I update it? How do I update it, right? So every time I update this name, I want this to be a little bit more dynamic, right? Just like the age, because age could be representing anything, right? And I don't have to update anything on my code, and it will just print it. So if I change age tomorrow, let's say your birthday happened, and day after that you ran this code, it should say my age is 21, right? So Muhammad's age is 21. So I didn't have to do anything. The program automatically knows when my date. I mean, you guys will figure this out. We'll build these applications where you would have to build your age calculator and all that using the date, so you can read the current your birthday, and if it reaches your birthday, it should increment 1. So we'll learn how to do all of those, but we got to do baby stuff now, right? So now I would like to store another value called string name equals to right, and instead of doing this, right, what if I just say name plus age, right? Things are getting a little bit better now. So let's assume we are getting this data from the front end, and our job is to do all of the computations. Maybe we are getting this from a client. When I say client, what do I mean? A little bit more specific. Yes, client is a user, but in this context of our conversation, what's a client? This is not the same client from a product management stage. This is a different kind. This is from a programming standpoint. When I say clients, what do I mean? Come on, guys. We went over it like an hour ago. What is it? Yes, but which? But yes, the softwares, right? So it could be the phone. It could be anything. So when I say I'm getting the users from data from the clients, I don't care about the user, and we understand that, right? But in this context, when you have an engineering context, it's actually we are referring clients is those devices that resides on the front end, right? So one of the conversation you're gonna happen in a meeting, hey, client is sending me wrong data, right? No one's talking about the users. It's more like, hey, browsers or iOS app or Android app is sending me wrong data. Yes, they're all essentially translating to user, but in this context, I want you to kind of say, hey, browser is sending me wrong data. So these data could be getting from the browser itself, right? All right, so now that we have this, if I run this code, what would happen?
Name and age things together.
Okay, good.
We don't have space.
So we have Muhammad, but the Muntakim and you see how many bugs can happen in so many different places? So we have to be very careful. So we need to add some space between that. So let's add another variable, right? So we can say plus, and then just add the space here. Space is a character, right? The computer sees space as a character. And then when we added that space now, Muhammad Muntakim 21, right? You get the point, right? We can be as descriptive as we can, but the whole point is right now we are just concatenating this. What I want to do for class work today, because I want everyone to be able to run their program today, right? Before you go home. So what I want you to focus on is when you deal with numbers, just use the int for now. All right, we're gonna learn more maybe the next class. When you're dealing with like data, like some sort of a string, right? Characters. I want you to use double quote on opening double quote, closing, and put whatever junk you want to put inside of that. What I want you to do for classwork, you add another variable called address, right? And print me a message that says, Mohammed with age lives in this street, something like that, right? So your printout message should look like this, and but it's your name, so that's that's what it is. So let's start working on this, and then Deepak and I can kind of verify this for you guys. Mohammed. Okay. With 32 years old. Lives in. What's up?
Address must be separate.
Yeah, exactly how I'm printing it here. I want to see exactly how this is, but for address, I want a variable. We want to make it in a way anyone can use it, right? So,
Yeah,
so
I mean, we can use a string, or we can separate string and integer. I mean, 347.
no, this is part of a string,
Okay.
right? So when I print your code, I should see your name, whatever your age is, and your address. Okay, and address can be inside of a string. The entire address, 347, that should be inside of a string. So it's not integer values. Okay, so this whole thing you can put it inside of your address, and that's okay if you make a mistake. That's you're stuck. All right. All right. Let me see 1 second. And for homework, to be honest with you, is just review. I want you to review the testing types, the architecture one more time, and we're gonna have a quiz and play around with this code base. That will be your homework. And the next homework is gonna be a lot of work for you to do a lot of variables, so you can work on Saturdays as well. Let me start with her, and then let me see if any. Deepak, if any questions from online, just what is that?
I never write quite the manner, so basics was the How did you do that?
No, that's something else. So the way you do right click on, are you new to Mac? So you do two fingers, right? And then the right finger is where you open up that. So you see how I have two fingers? And then I'm going to click on the right one, right? That becomes kind of your right click. Like if you remember the traditional mouse, right? And then you do it. Then you do basics and you do the same thing and create. If you're done online, please share it with Deepak. You created a project. You know what you did? Look, you created a class. Look at the difference in mine. My basics icon looks like a folder, right? You don't have a basics one. But most importantly, this should be the name, right? The project, you can name the project. You can name the project with the name, same name that I have. intallij-demo. Why do you think it's not working? Why do you think age is working and name is not working? Think about it. Before you come to me, I want you to like really do analysis of why. Look at my code and look at your code. See the difference. This is called debugging, okay? So we gotta learn how to debug first. This is a very easy problem to solve. I want you to spend some time to get things out, okay?
I think that's because really on the right side.
No. No, that's not the reason.
Also, like
You're calling something that doesn't exist in your code. Name does. Where does name exist in your code? Do I see name anywhere? Okay, so that's good. So I want you to see how silly the mistake was. So when you're doing coding, this is kind of mistakes we run into, right? But this is the very first mistake we run into. So let's start solving that. And move from there. Okay.
also, trying to prove that this is
Look, that's fine. You can rename it later. One good. Let me just go here. Yeah, that's the part I want you to figure this out.
Is it a shortcut for
Space itself is a shortcut. Come on, man. I want you to figure this out. So that's fine. The problem is okay. Let's see if you can think through this. Alright? Yeah, absolutely. Go on. If you're finished, you can exit. I just want to help everybody else.
I have one question. My shortcuts doesn't work. Like all of them.
Don't worry about it. The more you write, the better it can be. You kind of get familiar with the code. Are you done? Oh, what is the space? That looks nasty. You can just add a space.
Yeah, that's
I mean, it's not the right way to do it. I would rather add a space.
I don't know.
Yeah, okay. Excellent. Alright.
Sir?
Good? No. Oh, if you're not good, don't call me. Solve your own problems. Okay. I'm coming. I'm just kidding. But I can only help one person at a time. Deepak, maybe you can help out a little bit. Online guys.
Why didn't I have the command? What I did statement.
Where's the address?
Oh, I put statement.
Yeah, but that's not how I wanted to store the address. I wanted to create a variable for address. You see how we have a name. It's a variable that represents there's some data inside of variable called name. I wanted to have one called address and put your full address.
Bring an address.
And you don't have to give me your address. You just say 101 St. Allen Avenue, okay? You have an extra. Okay, but that's not enough for me. That's not the test, right? You have to go. That's fine. Good work, Nisha. You guys not gonna get a Mac? Are you kidding me? We have to eventually. Yeah, that's fine as long as it's a Mac. No, that's for name. For that's good. You're getting it. But we want this.
No. Yeah.
You can put the whole address. I know you're getting confused. You're thinking, I have value here, but then I also have, but I want you to put it the whole call the address back in here. That's fine. Keep playing with it. You don't have to rush. But you rather fix it yourself. Why? Why you didn't look? No copy. And you guys friends. I want to independently work, okay? This stuff? I think I sent it. If you look at welcome back in it.
No, I have the architecture, but the most one.
I think I sent it today. For the class. Check though. It's not like this. Let me see. You're not going to the age. I don't see age anyway. You're saying you get and also you can tell that you're not using it laid out.
You need to also
You see how it's a different color? But you have to use the age somewhere in your sentence, right? So you see where it says 32? You have to replace this value with the age variable. You did other two. You just have to do
or
the
you
same
can
thing for
make
age.
new one. Not the after your name. You go run, you see the what's it? See, you need the before. If you need the before, you need the after your name. And yeah, the
When you do that, is it going to happen? I'll try to do what I have to do, and then you can focus on the so you already have your words, so you want to start from this thing is what I want in your camp.
years old.
I know this is. I don't want that.
Why?
No, because that's part of the sentence. This is not gonna be reused, and also it doesn't mean anything. Is means like simplifying is good, but oversimplifying is bad. So this is what's happening here. I just want you to have age, name, address, not the actual sentence.
Okay, I can after my name.
You can do whatever but you have to do what I want you to do. Okay? This is what I want you to do, and this is how we're gonna do it.
This is the same.
Result is same, but I want certain structure. Okay? We can get into the same result 500 different ways, but there's some standard that I want to follow. Okay? You're not copying, right? I want you to individually work. Okay? I know, like sometimes you can always compare once you're done, but in the past, students have, and then one person is getting really hurt, right? So. So you get close to me and start there. Okay. Yeah, that's it.
I feel like this. It's like very.
Yeah, but we didn't go over variable name, but there should be one. Yeah, but that's fine. We didn't go over it yet. Why do you have a space at the end? I see it here. Your address and then it's date. Okay. It's gonna be whatever we want. STLC. STLC. And it's spacing down. Find it sloppy, like you got variables sticking out here. So organize your code, spacing and everything.
Yeah. Sorry. I understand that it is a number.
Okay. Is that your name called Mohammed Hussein who is?
Sure which screen.
That's not your name, okay? You just store your name.
Putting in any
Do
information,
the
right?
concatenation here.
Okay.
This is not
Between
correct.
these two.
Only your name,
I got it.
only your address, and whatever text that you need to dump in here, you just dump it. Okay? There are, yes, you don't have to have everything in variable. You can have part of it variable, part of it in your system. Yeah, so then I can, if let's say Deepak puts his name, he doesn't have to change it. So say Deepak put his name and then his age and his address, yes. Okay? Yes, write it in here somehow. Okay, you see where you write the space? You're gonna write it there. But anyway, no, not there. Think about how we did this here. You have to do it here. Not in a variable. It has to be an age. Yes. Okay?
Okay, so he wants us to add the address. Right?
Good.
What do you mean by the variable not taken out?
So they're not in line correctly. Okay, make sure the code is looking nice, right? No, I don't want you to put this part of it. Think about this. Is your name called? Is your name is Jia? I don't want to pronounce your last name. Is it Jia? Who is? Is that your name?
No, but
So I just want you to put your name. I don't want you to put this.
okay.
Figure out other ways to put that. And that should not be in another variable. Is your address called years?
Okay, I see.
Okay? That should be here.
I have a question for you. You said that some of the kids here took a class or something on this already.
Do the prep. I give the prep
The prep
course.
course, is it on the emails or?
I don't want you to take it anymore.
The thing is, I don't know what I'm doing right now, and that's a problem. So
Okay, I think it's on the very first email that Robin sent almost like a month ago.
okay.
Excuse me, I put only address, for address and name, my name, and whatever.
No, but I want the sentence to look like this. It still doesn't look like that.
I'm not. Didn't do
But that's how I want you to
no
do
run,
it.
no run. Still no run.
Okay.
Just the previous one. I'm asking about processing now.
And look what it says. It says Mohammed Hussein, who is years old, lived 32.
I make confused.
Yeah, so you have to fix that.
Yeah.
Okay.
First.
I want this to look like your name,
Yeah.
who is whatever your age is,
Yeah.
years old, and leaves your address.
I'm asking about the top, about string name and string.
So this is good now. The age, name, address, you fix that part.
Yeah.
But I still don't get the full sentence. I want you to write the full sentence.
Whatever I write down here, appear.
Yeah, but you have to add, you have to mix, match, and add, subtract, and this on the text. Does that make sense? You've got most of the part right. Think about it. Don't get frustrated. Right? Think about it. Take a moment and see what you're doing wrong. Okay? It's automatically saved. But you can do a command S. Save that, okay? Good.
So how do you get the system to print? Like, what do you write for this to come out?
I'll work with you on this. Yeah, I'll work with that. Let me just check. Deepak, can you just check with online one? Deepak, can you just check with online one?
I'm frustrated because I'm not sure how to put the sentence together.
That's
I
fine.
understand that Anyone's
That's totally
number.
fine. A couple of things you're doing wrong. Okay?
Okay.
Where is your look at my code? We have public class, right? Code hello world. You have that. But then I have some comments, you can ignore that. But then where is your main method?
Oh my god.
Getting frustrated is not going to help. You have to think line by line, word by word. If it doesn't match, you're doing something wrong, right? So no more getting frustrated, right? So
Yeah, that's what I
Excuse me. Can you please
I want to go home, guys. You gotta go.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry.
you should have kept it there. All right. So now you have this, right? Now what do you need? You have your package. You need a method, right?
Okay.
Because method is where you can run your code.
PSVM.
Right, do that. You done? There. That was good work. Did you solve it yourself?
Yeah.
Excellent.
Last part.
You don't have to
sorry.
read them. I mean, that's
No,
comments. That's just comments, but that's okay. If you want
I
to
just
copy,
wanted to-
yes, just copy line by line, and I'll come back in 5 minutes, okay? But if you run into error, no worry. Mohammed, both hands. Both hands.
I have many errors.
Both hands.
Listen, hello world is public. Should we declare it? What error is that?
Come on, guys. You created a class within a class. You're not there yet. Okay? Okay, gotta get rid of that. Okay, I'm gonna give you a punishment and do it over again.
It's fine.
Why do you have another one? It's time to confuse ourselves. It's okay.
Deepak, there was he made a package and
Okay, now create a class again and do this again. No one's leaving unless you're not doing it. Okay. Finish everything? Oh, you're doing it. Whatever I did. I'll try to do it again. Okay, you're good, yeah.
I feel is good now.
Both.
Excuse me. I feel is good.
You think it's good. I don't. What is the space between 32 and years? There should be a space. You're doing good. Excellent. So let's get the space. All right. Anybody online have a question? If you want to show me something, just copy paste your code and send it to me directly. I can just verify it. Andre, any questions? Can you check the online group? Yeah. Did they show their work? Everyone? Okay. Anwar? If you're finished online, please raise your hand. Can you, Nirmal, can you copy the code and just paste it on Slack for me?
Yeah, no problem. Take it.
Hey, how come?
Let me see something there. Maybe it's wrong.
Hey Mohammed.
Hey, can you hear me, Nirmal?
And cases also matter. So string and see the string on the board. So you're having
You okay? So your spaces are not working.
actually the problem with him is he's using a quite very old laptop. So even the right click on this one is not giving him an option to run. So I think we need to have like I need to get in separate.
But you see, like he's not adding space to his.
Yeah, that he's aware of, but how to run it, he's not able to run the code actually.
Okay.
With code, just by seeing the code, you can see that spaces are
Okay. So Nirmal, do you understand that? Did Deepak explain that to you?
the brackets are important, right?
Nirmal?
So when you start bracket, you close the bracket. Space and we always write within the class. If the space is within the class means
Hey Mohammed.
Hey. Can you hear me?
or you can then you can write the main method. You write everything within the main method.
Deepak. Can you see Wakil's code?
Sorry?
Wakil's code.
What else? Oh, yeah. I'll
Yeah.
do it.
Yeah. Wakil, Deepak is gonna work with you now. I can't Nirmal, I can't hear you. I think something wrong with the microphone.
Your bracket was
Andre, are you done?
how I used to do it as a beginner, which was you starting a class. So nothing is there. So when you take class, put a bracket and make like a space.
Oh, you gotta review last two classes material. STLC, the testing types. and all
Hey
that.
Mohammed.
Yeah, go ahead.
This main method.
We don't have
It's a
a
shortcut to get this.
Go ahead, Nirmal.
And again, just
Uh, yeah, so I'm actually talking to Deepak. I mean, I wrote the code, but for some reason, my like run button is not coming up green. So like I know I have to adjust some spaces, but I'm not able to
Run it.
like when I right click on main, I don't even see an option to run. So I'm not sure if that has to do anything with the way Java was installed or Intallij was installed. So I just sent you my code, but I'm not able to run to actually verify. But
Oh, okay, can you just kind of confirm that with Deepak later
sure,
to make sure, like, is it a computer issue or why can't you run it? Okay?
yeah, yeah.
All right.
But I still sent you on the Slack.
Yeah, no, I think your code looks good. You just need to add the spaces. That's all.
Yeah.
All right. All right, then I'll see you on Thursday, right? Yeah.
Yeah. I just had one question.
What's up?
It's not like anything with the session. So like my goal is that not sure like if by end of this course I will be able to do it.